All right, so I can see that we are live on YouTube. Probably had a couple seconds of us staring at the screen, but welcome everybody, of course, to the Living Legend Showdown between Peter Buddensiek and Roger Bodee. There's been discussion. Obviously, let's not, of course, forget my co-host here, the legendary Michael Hamilton, otherwise known as the Champ, but I'm pretty sure that is a nickname that's been ascribed to him, not developed by him, but we're gonna force him to wear it around his neck. Heavy is the head that wears the crown for now. First of all, before we get to that, great to be here, Michael. We obviously have a bit of a spectacle prepared for everyone. How are you feeling about this game?
I'm very excited to see it go down. I think this will be a very, very interesting set of games we got.
Yeah, I mean, so it's best of three, as I've been informed here. See, at least the players this time, no one like Tarek Patel in the Darkodia show match. Get stuff, Tarek. Unlucky, mate. There's been a bit of discussion about, power levels over the eras of Flesh and Blood. And, a lot of the example that a lot of people point to is like a very powerful deck that was very fundamentally broken, was really able to go well above rate and sort of just do its thing better than any other deck could, was this Seeds of Agony Chane deck. So we have Peter Buddensiek piloting that list against Roger Bodee, who sort of believes that Iyslander is powerful enough to sort of be able to put a stop to the shenanigans that this deck can do. We're going to be jumping in the game very soon. It is going to be Roger Bodee on the play on Iyslander. But before we jump in here, like, what should we expect from this matchup? A clash of, heroes from two completely different eras. What are your expectations here as an Iyslander master yourself?
Yeah, so Chane is going to be doing some very, very powerful things and things that Iyslander cannot really keep up with in terms of just raw power, raw rates that Chane gets. But instead of keeping up with it, Iyslander is going to be trying to disrupt it through channel like Frigid, Hypothermia, lots of her powerful disruptive tools. And the question is Iyslander strong enough, or is her disruption good enough that she can really stop Chane from just kind of running over her?
So we don't have anything sort of, I think, special in terms of deck lists prepared, but we sort of have them on hand and the deck lists are open here. So obviously, let's talk about some of the key tools for Chane, specifically back in that day, and for Chane in this matchup for Peter here, Michael, as you have the deck in front of you. The weapon is already putting me on edge for what Chane's going to be able to do in this matchup.
Yeah, so Chane's playing Duskblade. It's a card that actually I don't think was ever legal in Classic Constructed. I think it got banned before the set came out. So we never really got to see what Chane would do with Duskblade on his hands in a tournament scene. We saw it for a short time in Blitz before it got banned there. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, Duskblade is, kind of the counterpart to Dawnblade, I guess, introduced in Tales of Aria. Once per turn action, pay 1 attack. It has 2 base power. It says whenever you attack with Duskblade, if you played an attack action card and a non-attack action card this turn, you put a +1 counter on Duskblade. It's when you attack. If there's any turn where you haven't played an attack action card and a non-attack action card, you'll remove all +1 counters from Duskblade. So it's similarities to Dawnblade, but the alarming frequency in which Chane was sort of expected to be able to stack these counters up was probably one of the main reasons that this card never actually made it to the fold, never actually made it to Classic Constructed. There are also some heaters here in terms of Plunder Run and Seeds of Agony, Michael. So it's not just Duskblade that is so terrifying in this list. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see out of the main deck here from Peter.
Yeah, so we're seeing 3 copies of Plunder Run, just the red version here. And this is a card that got banned for a very good reason. Just you play it from Arsenal, you get +3 on your first attack, and then all of your attacks threaten to draw a card for the entire turn. And Chane is very good at giving his attacks go again, very good at cheating on action points, both with his hero power, some of the cards he plays in the deck to get go again, and Spellbound Creepers. So you can expect to see Plunder Run, the on-hit ability, threatened on 2, 3, maybe even 4 attacks in the same turn. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, being able to sort of bring that in at instant speed, of course. Chane doesn't really have an issue with go again, but Plunder Run obviously sort of giving that action point when it gets sort of flashed in quasi by creepers is scary. And then we're dealing with the fact that there's an on-hit effect, and then we're dealing with the fact that there's a potential pump, like an attack reaction here that comes alongside of it if it comes out. Obviously, well, rather. Yeah, if it comes out from Arsenal, it can represent extra damage on that next attack action card. So that is pretty frightening here. A lot of the other stuff pretty standard. Belittle Minnowism also going to be featuring this package. Let's quickly, and I say quickly because this isn't too crazy. Let's touch on this Iyslander deck here, which of course does feature some cards currently not legal in Classic Constructed, but they're look, for my money, they're far less egregious than the ones that we've sort of discussed. What are some of these cards, obviously, that we have returning to the fold in this Iyslander list?
Yeah, so Roger's Iyslander list has both Hypothermia and Amulet of Ice in it. Hypothermia is a card that I think caused a lot of frustration to play against because you'd start your turn, you'd play something that doesn't naturally have Go Again because most cards in Flesh and Blood don't have the just keyword Go Again on them. They have some ability to gain Go Again. So Hypothermia just comes out in response, and then that attack doesn't get Go Again anymore. And it kind of can end a turn when the other hero has several cards still in hand they're playing and getting to play. Amulet of Ice, I don't think is as important in this matchup. It can be nice to strip cards. I'm not sure if we'll see Roger even keep it in his deck or not, but it can be pretty powerful combined with like Aether Ice Veins to really strip a hand down to not having very many cards.
I guess the concern here is that it doesn't block, right? I guess it could be nice to have something free from Arsenal, and inflict a frostbite on your opponent's turn. But Amulet of Ice always felt like a way to make use of, having a full hand or having more cards than you otherwise would in like an Iyslander hand. Because often you want to block with a couple cards every turn cycle, keep a blue for Arsenal, and have an extra card, maybe even do something nice to like Coronet Peak your opponent, on your own turn. We're going to tell players they can get started in just a sec here. Is a best of 3. We got to have a little bit of a chat before the game as well, talking about like, have you tested this? Like, have you seen what the interactions look like here? Michael, how do you set expectations now for these decks from 2 very different times in Flesh and Blood's history?
How do you set expectations? Gosh, that's such a good question. I honestly don't know. Despite we've played a decent number of games, and at first the Chane was just kind of smashing Iyslander before you like made changes to the Iyslander deck, got more practice figuring out the timing of when you should be doing things, how to really sufficiently disrupt Chane and stop him from doing what he wants to do, stop Duskblade from getting a million counters on it. And once we made those changes, it did seem like sometimes the disruption lined up well, and sometimes it just still wasn't enough. So I think we could really see anything happen in these games, and I'm just really excited to get into it. And it's hard to really have perfect expectations. And I guess that's why we play the game. If we knew what was going to happen, it wouldn't be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving everyone a bit of a taste, though. I think that's a great point. Is that I think one of the biggest questions people have is Iyslander's disruption sufficient to actually stop Chane from putting pressure down and winning turn cycles, especially as the game goes sort of later and later? Because there is a concern that while Iyslander can have plenty of turns and push damage, right, you feel very powerful if you're able to deploy like Wounded Bull and also be able to disrupt your opponent on their kind of turn. But sometimes the games go a little bit longer for Iyslander, and that can be intimidating when you're dealing with Chane, who obviously has the ability to have some very explosive turns as that deck sort of starts to run out. Not to mention the Eclipse, when that game does go a little bit longer here. I'm assuming that trying to fatigue the Chane doesn't make any sense, right? That's not part of the game plan here at all.
Yeah, it's really hard to fatigue a disruption for some of his big turns, but you can't really threaten to fatigue him entirely. He can pretty easily include Eclipse in the deck because it's a blue and you want a high blue count into Iyslander anyway.
Yeah.
So Eclipse, along with like if the Duskblade has some counters built up on it, then even if the Chane runs out of threats, he might still have a reasonable number of stuff in Banish, and he can keep sequencing a non-attack like Seeds of Agony into an attack and a Duskblade swing. And this Duskblade is going to be huge if the game goes on for 15 turns. So I think that makes fatigue really difficult from the Iyslander side. On top of that, she doesn't really have a weapon. She can't really force Chane to block with cards.
Yeah.
But you can see like disruption plus damage. And then if Chane starts ending turns with several cards in Blood Debt, Chane is really efficient. He plays reasonably above rate. But if you're taking 4 Blood Debt every turn, that's going to make up for all that value you're gaining by being above rate.
Yeah, I mean, that disruption preventing Chane from actually getting those cards out of Banish, getting him onto the board, and getting him sent into the opponent's face. Great point. We're about to start the game, ladies and gentlemen, so strap yourselves in. It is a bit of a throwback here to Lovers of Runeblade. It is going to be Chane going up against Iyslander here in a bit of a fantasy match. It's Peter Buddensiek on Chane, Roger Bodee, of course, from Manacast on Iyslander. Let's jump into the action and see how this unfolds. Again, I think for Roger, he's pleased. He sort of gets to go first here, so gets to start off. Get something tucked in Arsenal here. Now, As we see equipment flipped here, probably don't expect anything too crazy. Carrion Husk, not a thing here, I suppose, for Chane. It's the Ice Weave so the Iron Weave is preferred.
Yeah, Carrion Husk can be pretty awkward because as Chane, basically, when you get down to like the 20s, oh, I'm not actually sure what's happening here. Looks like cards got mixed up or something.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of cards from Peter's deck ended up somehow across. I think Roger jumped in early and set things up, so he might have tried to sabotage Peter, and Peter's noticed a few cards missing here. So we get perfect information here, which is exciting. Good luck constructing these lines, Michael. And we have Roger on the play here. It's a brothers in arms into pitch. Fused Ice Eternal.
So looks like an Ice Eternal for 2 on the first turn. And normally when you play Ice Eternal going first, if they have enough Arcane Barrier to block it out, I usually don't fuse it, or you don't usually see a fuse. But since Peter's only on AV1 with just the Crowded Economy, this is going to leak 1 damage, so it makes sense to fuse.
And of course, leaves him with a bit of an uninspiring turn here. I think what's that? Seeds of Agony, got Shadow Puppetry and Belittle in hand here. So we'll see. You can draw up here into Howl from Beyond is the card drawn into the Chane hand here. So plenty of action. And again, with the blue to sort of fuel things here, we'll start with a Soul Shackle and let's see how this plays out.
So he has to pay 2 for the Soul Shackle because of all the Frostbites. And then no reveal for this Belittle. So it's not going to be too big of a turn.
Yeah, it's a great point. Actually, there is no little attack action that can be revealed alongside of that. So what does it end up looking like? We're going to make a Rune Charm here with Grasp of the Arknight. That's going to use those 2 resources floating.
And notably, this Peter can't do anything with it, but activating this Grasp of the Arknight, it uses the Go Again from his Chane ability to make the shackle.
Because it is an action. It's a Runeblade action, I suppose. Okay.
So this
Duskblade
attack won't have Go Again.
Okay. All right. So already we're starting to see. In fairness, obviously, it is a Chane starting his turn with no shackles and 2 frostbites, but not a whole lot of pressure being put down right now. It's going to be Blizzard into pitch here. Right, we have the Metacarpus node turned sideways.
So it looks like Roger pitched a blue to Arcane Barrier, the Rune Chant.
Sure, okay.
It's 2 resources floating, just, I guess, showing that he's using nodes to do so.
Fine. And the Insidious Chill used to block here. The Erase Face. Okay, so normally this is just not a card that Iyslander wants to bring in, but this card has extremely relevant text against a hero like Chane, Michael.
Yeah, so if cards are not Runeblade or Shadow, then again, stopping this Chane hero ability.
Oh my goodness, making Chane block. That is absolutely diabolical. All right, so what's the name? We've got Movrian Skies, we've got Yellow Belittle, we've got Red Minnowism, and a Red Bounding Demigon in hand here for our Chane player. I guess he might have pocketed the Shadow Puppetry, was it? I'm not sure.
The Belittle went to Arsenal last turn.
Gotcha.
Belittle.
So there is a reveal target for that Belittle at least. Block equipment. Yeah, we don't want that on here at all. Okay. I guess Bounding Demigon block from hand. I mean, if it's not from Banish, I guess it's kind of below rate, right? So
yeah, as Chane, you don't really want to be playing these red blood deck cards from your hand. They're not really priced very well if you're actually spending a whole card to play them. They get a lot of value when you get to play them for free when you banish them off shackles. And then you also can have cards like Art of War to add them to your hand, but we don't see that here.
So open up with Minnowism. Straight into Belittle here. So we do have the reveal of the yellow Belittle, of course. 3 or less base power. So we get to go digging for a Minnowism here. 3 red Minnowism in this Chane list. So no shortage of those if he wants to try and hit a little bit harder. But crucially, we have played an attack action card and a non-attack action this card. So there is that. There's some value to be gained here for Duskblade. Is Iyslander hand looking like? 2 in cases, a Blizzard, Polar Blast.
Yeah, it looks like Roger paused to think here about this belittle search. I think he was thinking about if he wanted to Blizzard it, but chooses not to, and lets Peter go ahead and grab a red Minnowism.
It's like a pretty devastating window to throw in disruption, right? Before your opponent's been able to get the extra resources out of their deck to potentially pay the toll to Blizzard, losing that go again. It was a key spot actually in Iyslander gaining incremental advantage over Fi actually before Belittle was went bye-bye. So 6 off that Belittle, of course, getting pumped up, blocked by Encase here. We've got a Shackle being made. Another Minnowism from Banished. It's that blue bounding Demigon now, like you said. Getting an attack action out of Banish. It doesn't matter what it is at this point because it's getting buffed quite nicely and it's essentially free. If you don't count your deck thinning awfully quickly. So 5 here. Here comes that Blizzard now. Pay 2.
So this Blizzard isn't actually going to shut down the Chane's turn. He'll still get to pitch the yellow Belittle to attack with Duskblade and put a counter on it. So seems like a pretty good turn for Peter here. Despite the Blizzard, he was not really... The Blizzard and the Erase Face still wasn't quite enough to keep Chane from doing what he wanted to do here.
Now, I suppose there's like a world where Encase here is obviously pretty phenomenal as there's only AB1 for Peter, so that on-hit effect is going to hurt. It's a good way to use an action point here, and that's exactly what Roger's going to do, right? Here comes the Encase, fuse with Polar Blast, of course, Encase being free. So how bad is this for Chane?
So Encase is a card that hasn't actually seen very much play since Iyslander came out because it doesn't really line up great into a lot of the decks in the format. But Chane, it stops both his hero power and his spellbound creepers, which are both very important. They're key sources of how he gives his attacks go again. And without them, it'll be pretty hard to really give go again to his stuff and attack with the Duskblade, which is what he's trying to do. Though we do see a Shadow Puppetry in his hand. So that Shadow Puppetry it goes a long way in making sure you can play a non-attack and attack.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, obviously getting go again, virtually a Soul Shackle with a +1 effect. And of course the on-hit effect of banishing a card from the top and, or being able to banish a card rather and have access to it here. So pretty scary stuff. Looks like that bounding Demigon got in.
Yeah, so these are the Shackle reveals, this red bounding Demigon and blue seeds. There's actually a window after each Shackle resolves because it happens during the action phase. So Roger's actually casting this Channel Lake Frigid in response to the second banish, it looks like.
It's something that, if you've not actually had a chance to play these 2 heroes, you probably wouldn't really have experienced. So much like, I guess, Briar in many senses, if there's an Embodiment of Earth popping, there's always a priority window for Iyslander here if Chane wants to create Shackle. So Seeds of Agony, Shadow Puppetry, interbounding Demigon here.
So despite the Encase and the Channel both being in play, this is actually still a pretty solid turn. It's going to be 1 damage from the Seeds of Agony, 5 from this bounding Demigod, and then Peter has a yellow, so he'll be able to follow up with the Duskblade and get another counter on it.
Yeah, again, having no Shackle, no Creepers, not great, but pretty perfect group of cards, I think, here to sort of follow it up. And yeah, now, of course, that Duskblade's starting to grow. Now, we also talked about this before the game. At what point does Duskblade become better than like Rosetta Thorn here for Chane? How many counters are we asking for?
Yeah, so the first time you attack with it and you put a counter on it, it's going to deal 3 damage, which is 1 less than Rosetta Thorn. The second time, it'll deal 4, which will make it break even with Rosetta Thorn. The third time, it'll deal 5, which is 1 above Rosetta Thorn. So at that point, you've done 1 below, equal, and 1 above. So you've attacked for 12 total between the 3 attacks, which is basically tied with Rosetta Thorn.
Yeah.
Once you get the 4th attack with it, you get the 4th counter and it's coming in for 6. Then you're finally beating out Rosetta Thorn in terms of how much damage it's dealt. So at this point, it's got 2 counters. It hasn't done anything better than Rosetta Thorn yet, but It is threatening very quickly to get to that point.
Yeah, this is frightening. I mean, Roger's already down to 16. He's taking 20 damage. So even with the there was the potential of the disruptive on hit from the Erase Face. Then there was the Encase fused. We have yet another erase face here, and I mean, a very key card to be tucked in Arsenal here for Rogers. So, forcing the block, of course, much of this equipment's gotten pretty tarnished, for our Chane player Peter, but threw that in front of the first erase face. So this one is going to ask for respect, and Chane being off that Arsenal, not having a blue in hand, and now having to block this pretty extensively potentially may hurt. Is there a wall where can you not block this ever?
Yeah, so there's not really like with a belittle hand, he doesn't really need to block it because he could go like belittle and then play a non-attack also, and that would meet the Dust Blades criteria of not having your counters fall off. That said, if he keeps his whole hand here, he can pitch 2 Ghostly Visits to play this first belittle through the Channel Lake Frigid, which is not exactly where you want to be, but it is a way to play a non-attack and attack to keep your 2 counters. It doesn't look like that's what he's going to decide to do, though. He's just going to block here. Probably end up losing his counters on Dustblade here, but he is up 32-16, has 2 shackles in play. It's not a bad spot for Chane by any means, but yeah, he finally was disrupted.
Yeah, that hurts for sure. Definitely had that big turn though prior, which gives a little bit of a buffer here. Unhallowed Rites comes out here, so I guess this is just into banish. I guess if he has the opportunity to make use of this, it will allow a blood deck card to sort of be returned to the bottom of the deck. And of course, if you played a non-attack action this turn, you can play it from your banish zone. That criterion is the one we're concerned about here, not only for the Dustblade now, but also for getting value out of Unhallowed Rites. There's also Seeds of Agony, though, which may satisfy that condition. There's still the threat of Channel Lake Frigid, though. That's been deployed. That was deployed at the start of, the shackle, rather, sorry, of Peter's last turn here. So here comes your Seeds out of banish. That's going to cost 1.
So looks like Peter is going to be able to keep the 2 counters on his Dustblade by playing Seeds into Unhallowed Rite. It's not a very strong turn. It's only threatening 5 damage, but the counters are staying. There is a non-attack and an attack.
Being able to ask for cards still with this kind of disruption is obviously a bit of a bonus here. That is a copy of Channel the Bleak Expanse in Roger's hand. Obviously, it says heroes can't draw cards, reveal cards, or search decks from effects here. So is this just like an anti-belittle minnowism card, or concession to that combo primarily?
Yeah, it hits belittle minnowism. It's also very good against Art of War because they choose the banish draw 2 mode and you flash in your Channel the Bleak Expanse and suddenly they aren't required to banish at that point, but you did, because banish happens on card resolution, but you do basically stop them from getting a lot of value from it. So it's there for those 3 cards. It's another card that doesn't see play in Classic Constructed because Iyslander doesn't really need this kind of like situational disruption that sometimes is quite good and sometimes not that good. But when you have a menace like Chane that's doing all these powerful things and you really need to disrupt him, it does work. And it looks like Roger's actually just casting it out here.
Okay. So Channel the Bleak Expanse, of course, has similar conditions to Channel Lake Frigid, is that you will place flow counters on it and you need to have ice cards in your pitch zone to maintain that here. So while it appears unlikely we're going to see the CLF stay in play here, the Channel the Bleak Expanse will be a little bit of a nuisance. I mean, the Plunder run in Peter's hand might get tucked in the Arsenal first anyway, so we probably won't fret too much about that here. But yeah, there is a belittle there, so there might be some value gained from sending this very targeted piece of disruption at Chane here.
Yeah, not being able to search off this belittle is probably going to matter here, since there's not really currently a non-attack that Chane wants to play. So belittle would go grab that red minnowism, and then he'd play the red minnowism and keep all the counters on his Dustblade. Now, if he wants to keep the counters, it looks like he's just going to have to cast his Plunder Run from hand.
I guess it's pretty important to keep these counters at this point, right? You're kind of beholden to it, especially, following that entire conversation about like still having a very functional weapon. We're wanting to see this Dustblade get more value than sort of Rosetta Thorn to justify its inclusion here. So the Plunder Run comes out of hand straight into a Riftbind here following a Shackle.
So this Riftbind just for 3 since the Plunder Run wasn't played from Arsenal. So pretty easy for Roger to block this out and not have to worry about basically a card being drawn from the Plunder Run.
It says the next time an attack action card you control hits this turn, draw a card. So I mean, we have Go Again, of course, on this Riftbind, care of the Shackles. So Peter can still threaten that with this Belittle, I suppose. Again, none of these are breakpoints right there. But, you know, it's still pretty scary, still forcing blocks, and this is not a terrible way to shut that down. Hypothermia out of the pocket, inflicting a frostbite as well. Yes, you're very missed, Hypothermia, don't get me wrong. So attacks that Chane controls can't go again. That's what Shackle does, so that completely stuffs that plan.
Mm-hmm. So Riftbind gained Go Again, and then lost it because Hypothermia works retroactively. So yep, Riftbind just goes to graveyard. We don't see an attack from Dustblade. And at this point, I'm not sure we're going to beat Rosetta Thorn in terms of value.
Mm-hmm. It's also, you know, we've represented a bit of a life swing here as well. Peter's definitely taken a decent amount of unanswered damage. And again, with a blue Ether Ice Vein fused and only 1 point of Arcane Barrier, there's disruption coming.
I think we actually need to stop the game because of Chane of the Bleak Expanse. Roger can't fuse this Ether Ice Vein.
Okay. Well, what do you think about this one? IP2 to both players. How does that sound? Okay. Yeah. You can just type it in game chat here.
In game chat. Okay.
It, yeah. That'll come up on screen as well, but we can hang on.
You cannot fuse because of channel.
Yes. We're hovering that now.
Yeah,
so
you play heroes cannot reveal cards, and fuses as additional cost you reveal cards. So
we're gonna roll it back, ladies and gentlemen. Well spotted. So I guess this is just.
So it looks like instead Roger's just gonna cast this Insidious Chill, I think is what they decided, and then Arsenal the channel.
Makes sense. No harm, no foul. We'll have that CLF pocketed instead. Now, Channel Bleak Expanse will go away, so that's on the table. And, there's a little tech card in this hand here that is a little spicy. Tell us about Scour in this matchup.
Yeah, so Scour both can do a lot of damage and be pretty disruptive for Chane in general, since you're going to break quite a few shackles and deal deal damage. It really can slow him down. You spend 2 cards to deal 3 damage and break 3 of his shackles. It's a pretty solid rate. And then, well, I guess it depends how you value the shackle. So it's not like amazing on rate, but like Chane really relies on hitting these non-attacks from Blood Debt to be able to play them out and have big turns. And you also see, I think Peter is on 9 copies of Seated at Savagony, and that's not a card you really want to draw. You really want to banish it to your shackles.
Yeah. And so what he's done here, Shadow of Ursa, yellow, I think it was a Seeds of Agony, into the banish zone off that shackle here. Frostbite already inflicted, of course, as we had that priority window taken up here with Channel Lake Frigid again being deployed. So that card, as has been pointed out in chat here, has been, the premier form of disruption that Iyslander has been able to leverage here. However, Belittle can solve this problem. Reveal Riftbind.
Yeah, we see the Chane of the Bleak Expanse is no longer in play, so this Belittle can reveal a card and go probably tutor up that blue Minnowism to get the resources needed to play some of these cards.
Yeah. It allows for a relatively sort of dense turn here.
Yeah.
What about though our Duskblade counters? Can we maintain? Oh, there's a seeds in the banish. Excuse me. Yeah, so we're fine there. Wow, I guess with access to your banish zone of shackles, it's pretty easy to sort of meet those conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's no longer a big ask, though. It looks like he activated Chane and then played the seeds, but I think the players are just letting him fix the sequencing and play the seeds first and then activate Chane. That way the Go Again from Chane isn't eaten up by the Seeds of Agony. Based on how it's layered on the board, I think that's what happened. It's
easy to run foul of this because Chane reads your next Runeblade or Shadow action this turn gains Go Again. many of which obviously, you know, not relevant for a non-attack action that already has go again printed on the card here. So sequencing that correctly is important to make sure you actually get some value, especially with cards like Bounding Demigod and stuff that just don't have natural go again on them. So yeah, we need to switch those around, and Peter's done that. Good on you, Roger, for allowing this. This extremely high stakes game here, of course. All right, Shadow of Ursa here. So again, it's a 2 power that comes in, and it says there's an additional cost to play this card. You can banish a card with Blood Debt from your hand. If you do, that's how you're giving Shadow of Ursa go again. Now, Shadow of Ursa is already going to get go again, care of that that shackle. So we don't see the banish. Instead, we see a pitch for Duskblade through this CLF, and hey, 3 counters. Starting to look pretty sharp.
It looks like Roger just takes all this damage and fires back with the Waning Moon.
Yeah. Tunic counter, of course, as you've played Channel Lake Frigid here, so able to chip some damage back here, but I mean, that was it. At this point, he was pretty much out of disruption. That Minnowism really allowing Peter to play through, you know, the disruption that Channel Lake Frigid poses. So the question is now, like, you know, if there's Belittle Minnowism sort of happening so frequently here, maybe we need to see these Insidious Chill counters start to be leveraged in some way or other. Because I think you need all 3 cards for this card to be on rate, right? You're pitching a whole card to play it, and the card itself that's sort of 6. So you're looking for, you know, you're looking for a decent amount of value from that one. But yeah, Roger obviously not able to fuse anything quite yet, but keeps that flow counter up.
Yeah, if Roger dies with this Insidious Chill on 3 counters, it really didn't do anything, basically. Yeah. You play it, you commit it out to the battlefield, and then you really need to fuse some cards to get value out of it. And we saw he drew 2 Encases very early on in the same hand. I think there's 3 Encases, and there's the 8 Ice Veins, and then the turn he wanted to fuse the Ice Vein, he had the Channel of the Bleak Expanse in play. So things haven't really been working out, I guess.
So this is the yellow Belittle, revealing an Unhallowed Rites from hand here. There's also an Art of War in hand for Peter. Roger on 4. This is extremely frightening situation of Ian now. Chane is starting to get pretty scary. Again, we've lost a few shackles. We've lost a few of those. Invert Existence was actually banished off there. So again, no shortage of Arcane Barrier here. There's a AB2 for this Iyslander, so that can be answered. Here's a block though with that Aether Hail.
Yeah, even though Chane was only on 1 shackle, he still managed to hit a Blood Debt card here. And this Blood Debt card is presenting 2 damage when Iyslander's at 4 at instant speed. It's going to be pretty tough to get out of this one, I think, for Roger.
The Seeds of Agony here. Again, your next attack action card with cost 1 or less you play this turn has deal 1 arcane damage to target hero. Obviously, crucially, satisfying Duskblade's condition. It's the blue Minnowism fetched up by the Belittle here, pitched away, and we will be sending the Duskblade in. On attack is when the counter gets given, and we'll make sure we just throw up a Soul Shackle really quick. Give this weapon go again.
Duskblade coming in for 6 here, blocked for 5 because it takes 1 damage down to 3. Roger's really looking like he's in trouble. And this is kind of that critical break point where the Duskblade has become more efficient than Rosetta Thorn. It just attacked for 6 here.
It's scary because obviously the Duskblade had go again. This Invert Existence is an instant. So this is always a question of, you know, you could be telegraphing something more here. What we know is that there's an Art of War in hand, so maybe not the case here. Emerita Scolding come out of Arsenal here. Time to do some damage, but Chane is still quite a long way from the sort of the kill zone, so to speak. We've lost the Channel Lake Frigid as well.
So Roger got an Arsenal of Blue Aether Ice Vein there, which will finally trigger this Insidious Chill. It will remove a counter from it, but it's probably too little too late at this point.
We've got another invert off our Soul Shackles. We've got an Art of War in Arsenal, Art of War in hand. Let's deploy that now. Roger doesn't sort of respond to the Shackle with his Arsenal instead allows that last priority back. Now respond to Art of War as that's played out here. So Fuse, either Ice Vein, 3 arcane damage. Of course, discard unless you pay 2 on hit here. And of course, there'll be 2 instances of that with the Insidious Chill in play. So starting to get some value out of that aura that, Roger committed pretty heavily to deploy sort of earlier on in this game. So it is going to be asking a lot of Chane, but Chane's got a fairly blue dense hand here.
Yeah, if this was a hand with like multiple reds in it, I think there might be some hope. But with Chane having 2 more blues and a yellow, it's probably going to end up okay. Though, notably, both of these attack actions require Chane to have played a non-attack to be able to cast them from the banish zone. So once this Art of War resolves, that he banishes one of them. If he doesn't draw into a non-attack action, that's kind of the hope for Roger here.
I mean, there's so many extra resources. Invert Existence is pretty frightening. Again, there's none floating here for Roger. He's got 2 reds in hand, so sure, he can eat up the Invert Existence damage, but there's a 6-7 power Duskblade potentially coming his way sort of on this turn. The Ice Bolt back in hand, of course, that was the revealed for the Fuse here, so another card in pitch. So that's the banished card, excuse me, off the Art of War. Draw 2, we've got red Seeds, and we've got a red Unhallowed Rites. Oh God, the synergy is unreal, man. Yeah, just put your Unhallowed or Seeds in banish, have access to those, draw 2 cards.
Art of War notably can't banish Seeds, but it's going to be just fine with the Unhallowed here.
Yeah.
And then there's a non-attack action to turn on the Unhallowed Rites, and then the Shackle to give it go again.
Oh yeah, we're going to Valley Town with this Duskblade now for sure. Another blue. That pitch zone is starting to intersect with the banish zone here. Never a good sign if you're going up against the Chane, and you are extremely dead, Roger. Basically embalmed at this point.
So we can calc out how much damage this actually would have been. There's 1 from the Seeds, 6 from the Unhallowed Rites, and then 7 from the Duskblade would have been 13 plus an invert for 2 more. 15 damage coming in. Nothing Roger can do about it at that point.
That is following a fused Ether Ice Vein with Insidious Chill trigger, no less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously that key synergy of Art of War, likely giving you access to the card you banished if it's an attack action, or if it's a blood deck card, excuse me, is pretty scary. It means that Chane can do things with Art of War that a lot of heroes just really can't do. Having access to so many cards, having 3 blues on that particular turn, and yeah, Duskblade ended up getting to 4 counters here. And this is how many shackles were destroyed by Scour? Was it 2, 3?
3 shackles.
Oh man, I mean, I remember back in the day, just getting 1 shackle off Chane with a Runic Reclamation, you were feeling pretty good about. Getting 3 shackles and still not being able to slow Peter down really says a lot about just how powerful the deck is. But my expectations have been set in the pre-game in that if Iyslander is able to land that disruption at the right time, this can really end up being a different story. So already I'm getting a feeling that this matchup can actually look quite polarized depending on how these players sort of hit the ground running or not, as it may be the case.
Yeah, a lot of the time when Chane wins the game, it'll look kind of like that, where it looks like a runaway game. It doesn't look like it was very close. But if you look back, there was a turn where I think it was Duskblade was on 2 counters, and he had 2 shackles in play and banished a Seeds of Agony and an Unhallowed Rites. And because he banished both the non-attack and the attack, even though Roger had a Channel Lake Frigid in play, he was able to keep the 2 counters on the Duskblade.
Oh, I mean, they are running it back quick smart here. This is, I guess, Roger on the play again, starting off by deploying Insidious Chill, getting the Waning Moon in there, wasting no time throwing down here. Why not? Only AB1 here, so you can link some damage.
Yeah, and this is a much better start for Roger here. Insidious Chill, starting with Insidious Chill versus the last game when he started with giving his opponent 2 Frostbites and both times leaking 1 damage. Definitely would rather have an Insidious Chill in play.
Yeah, Ice Eternal didn't feel particularly impactful here. This is your chain player now with the Grasp of the Arknight, of course, creating a rune chant, now creating a shackle, giving this a rift bind. Go again. This is just base power rift bind, I suppose. So 3. Brothers in Arms eats it up quite nicely. Duskblade, though, of course, already starting to build up. Man, I'm a Dorinthia player, so I have a certain sweet sense of satisfaction seeing counters put on my weapon. This is unlike anything I could have imagined. I mean, I might have ended up a Runeblade player if things had gone differently.
There was no non-attack action played this turn since Chane had a 4 attack action hand, so there won't be a counter on the Duskblade.
Of course, sorry. Just a Grasp activation. My bad.
Yeah. Roger only ends up leaking 2 here and gets to come in with a final. So this is more attacks than I think we saw Roger play in the entire last game.
Yeah,
that's not true. We did see an erase face and a scar for a scar, I think, but it's close.
Yeah, I think like 2 erase faces, right? One which like Chane had to pretty hastily block, the other which he just sort of had to fight through, if I'm not mistaken. Still was able to circumvent the restrictions that it placed on his play the next turn. But this is much more what Iyslander wants to do, right? Block with a couple cards, use his attack actions to walk life totals down. Don't let the game get so far away from her, and then of course be able to really hit hard with heavy disruption, and then of course the Stormstrider's activation. So Cold Snap here, not a terrible card, of course, against someone like Chane. This is pre-banish of this 1 shackle.
And Peter is paying 1 to make sure his arsenal is not frozen, because I believe it was just, I guess I can take a look real quick. It was a Bounding Demigod that he ended up arsenaling last turn. So it's not really a card that he wants to get stuck there, but he'd rather arsenal something more powerful like this Art of War.
Eclipse. Maybe a little early for that one. Maybe not exactly what the doctor ordered at this stage.
Yeah.
No blood dead on Eclipse though, so it just hangs out. All right, already into an Art of War here. So Frostbite has been paid through. Obviously, Peter knows there's no threat of, fusion. That disruption is out of the way now, so he can crack in, find some damage.
Yep. Arsenal's gone. Gates are open, I guess.
Right, Minnowism, Shackle. So there's your non-attack action this time. Red Bounding in the Banish Zone. Love to see that. This is bounding for 4.
That should be for 6, I believe. It's buffed up by both the Art of War and the Minnowism, and then it gets +1 from itself because it was played from Banish.
Out of Banish, that's right. Shouldn't be looking at base here. Okay, so again, a card that on itself, on its own, doesn't really represent anything to write home about. On this kind of sequence, looks far more scary. Yeah, it's just a matter of blocking here now for Roger. Gives out one of those Channel Lake Frigids. Again, he has a Channel Oblique Expanse in hand here, so I can pick and choose from his sort of disruption methods.
And it looks like this is over pitching this red Bounding Demigod and the Seeds to activate Grass to make a rune chant. And then I expect to see it followed up with the Duskblade to get that first counter on it, since a non-attack and an attack was played this turn.
And it stands to reason, right? Peter can't cycle his arsenal here. I don't think he paid through that Cold Snap, and having a 0 for 3 no-go again stuck in your hand when you could instead banish it from your deck later in the game makes a whole lot more sense. So Chane definitely has to be more cognizant of what he's sending to the bottom of his deck via that pitch zone. And there it is. Not too shabby. 3 damage in here from this Duskblade.
3 damage plus the 1 from the rune chant. But I would say that's a pretty successful turn from the Iyslander side. She still has a 3-card hand. She didn't take too much damage, despite it being an Art of War turn for Chane. And if we remember back the turn, or back leading into that, I believe Chane took a full Finals Fighting Spirit, all 7 damage to be able to play that turn. So. Yep.
It did indeed. So it's still a red Bounding in Arsenal. Red Seeds, we've got a Ghostly Visit, Belittle, and a Invert Existence. So just a Scar for a Scar to open things up here for Roger. Does have that go again, of course. Coronet Peak you, he says. Nice way to make use of keeping plenty of these cards in hand.
And once again, we're seeing this belittle with no 3-power card to reveal to it. So I'd expect that Peter will want to arsenal this because that's kind of been what he's been trying to do, it seems like, when he hasn't had a reveal. So
yeah,
we could see something like play the Seeds of Agony, play this Bounding off a Shackle, and then swing Duskblade.
Roger here, obviously making use of this priority window now. Pre-banish once more. It was a Channel Lake Frigid tucked in Arsenal here, so. But there's disruption begin.
Yeah, and this channel would be extremely effective here. He can't know Peter only has a single blue here, but that's going to make it very hard to shackle and put a counter on the Duskblade this turn.
And what is this then in the following turn? I mean, you're looking at a hand where you can like fuse a red Ether Ice Vein if you wanted to just. Oh, you need an ice card in pitch. Oh, you don't? No, of course it's your opponent's turn. Excuse me, as I'm going back and forth in my own head here.
Yeah, so we'd expect Roger pitch a blue to play the channel out, and then on his turn, he can either pitch the blue Ice Vein to play the red Ice Vein fusing the Polar Blast, and then pitch the Polar Blast to Waning Moon, and that would fulfill the requirement of having an ice card to keep channel around. If he does that, he won't have an arsenal. What I'd expect to see instead is Roger pitch a blue here to play the channel, and then I expect to see him block with the other non-ice blue card, and then if he does that, he can Coronet Peak by pitching an ice card and then arsenal the red Aether Ice Vein and save it for a turn where he's not going to have a channel in play. And when he doesn't have a channel in play, that's when he really wants to be taxing with the Insidious Chill and the Aether Ice Vein on hit, because Chane's going to be pretty scary if he has a full hand with no channel.
So it's almost like we want to space this disruption out a little bit more, block conservatively the attacks that Chane is able to push through this first, amount, as opposed to just like, okay, see if you can find damage and I'll just, strip your hand even further here. It's almost like he's rationing that disruption now in multiple turn cycles by tucking that Aether Ice Vein away.
Yeah, exactly.
Seeds of Agony here. That one had to be paid for. That was a little costly. Make a shackle. Damn, this is quite the economy. Yeah, paying to make a shackle.
Yeah, so we're seeing 3 cards spent from Chane to end up presenting 4 damage here, it looks like. Or actually, this is a yellow Bounding Demigod, so it's only presenting 3 damage total. 1 from the Seeds and 2 from the Bounding.
Yeah, not efficient at all here for our Chane. This belittle does not have really anywhere to go this turn. Still, we get a non-attack. We get an attack. So some of these checkboxes are getting ticked at least for Peter, but you can just see how deadly, Channel Lake Frigid is to a deck. And I mean, Bright Play is probably familiar with this sensation that really wants to run very low to the ground. Only had the 1 blue in hand to start this turn.
Looks like they're having trouble tracking the damage. I believe Roger should be at 24. I think he was at 27 before the Seeds and the Bounding.
Yeah, he's asking, should be at 24. Right, tuning counter here to allow for a Waning Moon follow-up. Pretty classical line here from Iyslander, particularly disruptive one, and also one that features a little bit of chip damage back. So kind of gives you everything you want as an Iyslander player here. And yeah, correctly, 1 and 2 damage being presented by the Seeds into. You're being forced to multitask a bit here, Michael, by our players.
I could be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure Roger was at 27 at the start. I think he took 1 down to 26 and then took 2, and then there was a confusion there.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure he started the turn at 27.
So as we expected, that belittle is pocketed here. And Roger's definitely got a mechanism via which to keep this Channel Lake Frigid around. You should like.
So it looks like Roger is going to go with the line of casting the Aether Ice Vein instead of just arsenaling it and pitching the Polar Blast. I think that's because Peter didn't actually present a 3 damage attack for Roger to block efficiently with his 3 block. So
It's 2 and 1,
just-
yeah.
yeah.
It's like a slightly anemic Rosetta Thorn waved in his face. He thought, okay, well, I can actually keep a full grip here.
Mhm.
So he does double down on disruption in a sense. Now he has to pitch this Polar Blast to Waning Moon, right, to get an ice card on Arsenal, correct?
Yeah, to get an ice card in the pitch zone for Channel Lake Frigid.
Pitch zone, excuse me. Yeah.
So we won't see any disruption other than this Insidious Chill trigger, the Aether Ice Fade on hit effect, and the Channel Lake Frigid still in play. That's all the disruption we'll see for this
just
turn.
a little bit. Good,
Yeah.
All right, yeah, a bare smattering of it here. So Peter's expectations for his next turn probably need to be shrunk a little bit. Yeah, taking much of that damage with AB1, not much you can do, and then we are having a card discarded, that Shadow Puppetry going into the bin from the actual Aether Ice Vein trigger itself. So again, a little bit of damage, a little bit of disruption, everything you like to see.
And things are looking much better for Iyslander this game. It's very likely that Chane ends up taking Blood Debt this turn. It's pretty hard to clear your whole banish zone when you have a yellow and a red in hand and a channel in play. So
it was a red belittle in Arsenal, I think. So you can't, like, with Channel Lake Frigid in play, you've got a lot of conditions you need to meet. You want to clear Blood Debt. You also want to, keep counters on Dustblade if at all possible. Minnowism played out here, costing 1. Shadow Aversa gonna get there. Wow.
Coming in for 5.
He did it.
And it looks like Roger just quickly takes the damage. He just wants to keep his 4-card hand.
A few bogeymen in the grip here. Obviously, Hypothermia, very powerful. Enlightened Strike here. Tucking away, of course, that extra attack action, a redundant one.
And this chain deck does not... they pulled out the Quicken token to represent the go again.
Yeah.
But
This chain deck Walker's got an upgrade, yeah.
Yeah. This chain deck does not block very well from what we've seen. He has 9 copies of Seeds of Agony, and then a lot of these other non-attack actions that block for 2. And even some of the attacks, like the Belittles, don't block very well either. So ends up taking this 5, and then this Fused in case, triggering Insidious Chill, and also it's going to turn off, again, Spellbound Creepers and Chain's Hero Power.
My God. Oh, it's okay, though, because Channel Lake Frigid is going away. So, it's showtime for Chane, right? Goodness me. Now, from the frying pan into the fire, if the fire was a blustering, blizzarding glacier in the middle of the tundra. CLF goes away here, but yeah, we've gotten 2 of those Insidious Chill triggers. We're down to 7 for Chane, and already, so we've seen now, at least we're starting to see the polar opposites of this spectrum of matchup, and bingo, bango, bongo, that is a goose egg on your shackle hits. So Chane's got to get it done with these 3 plus Arsenal.
Yeah, and still no card to reveal in hand for this Belittle at Arsenal.
Jesus. Well, we have Half and Beyond coming straight through. That is the red Minnowism at home, and here's Belittle coming out now. So not nearly as exciting when you are not able to obviously search your deck, but still represents a body that carries 3 power plus that Howl. So we're at least coming in for 6.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Roger just... Oh, I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised to see him take this and come back with Scar into stuff. Of course, I forget. Roger has significantly more life than Peter on Chane this turn. So,
I mean, oh God, yeah, heading into the let's call it the kill zone. Being able to have that Aether Ice Vein in hand that can come off of a Storm Striders at some point is pretty good. Yeah, case there's no shackle here. You cannot activate the Aether Iron Weave either, because that is frozen. Some serious shrinkage here for Chane. Put that away, sir.
All right, they're unwinding the game state. It looks like they're cleaning it up a little bit. still trying to activate Chane.
Mm-hmm.
And Roger's pointing out that he cannot do that because Encase stops hero
You are,
abilities
you
and
are.
equipment.
Yeah. Right. Instead, it is Duskblade. Conditions met. Somehow, in a convoluted manner, we actually managed to get a non-attack and an attack action through thick and thin, rain, hail, blizzard, or shine. We're able to keep getting counters on this thing. Here come the boots, though. And they are about to go walking. Here's your Ether Ice Vein. Here's your Waning Moon. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah. Looks like Peter goes to 1 from this, but he knows he's dead because there's...
Is it
Are they?
7, right? It's 5 plus...
Oh, wait. Is that a red Aether Ice Vein? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
a red Ether Ice Vein.
Oh,
Plus
so
the
he's
Waning
just
Moon,
dead.
so it's
Okay.
8, right?
Yeah, that just ends
with
it.
AB1 and nothing, I think, left in his hand. He got absolutely obliterated there. So, okay, we won a piece.
Yeah, evened up, and we saw kind of like what happens when the Chane doesn't draw very well, because Chane had several awkward hands back to back, and when he finally had what looked like reasonable hands, they didn't stay reasonable through a channel, through Aether Ice Veins, through Icelander's Disruption. So
because of the, I mean, I don't want to ruin the narrative here, obviously, around the sort of the entire premise of this showdown, but because of how polar both these games have been, even whoever wins this game, like, you still can't definitively say your one deck is necessarily stronger than the other. I'll tell you what, if we get a really strong showing from one deck, if it's a very convincing win, then perhaps I'll allow it here. But yeah, very swingy so far, and you can see Chane obviously having some more awkward hands, right? I think definitely doesn't draw up nearly as elegantly. But I will say, through like Ether Ice Vein fused, Insidious Chill counter, still able to put 5 damage across and satisfy your Duskblade condition, still able to have a semblance of a turn where many decks would be probably arseling or playing an Epot and crying or something similar. So. Yeah, Encase is good. Encase here, really nasty. All right, here we go. Game 3, ladies and gentlemen. It has begun. Seeds of Agony here. Chane, of course, and through thick and thin, through game loss violations left, right, and center, we've gotten to our decider match. The Hunting Demigod here coming out. So we're going to filter the hand a little bit here for our Chane player. Set himself up for a strong turn 2.
yeah, so this is kind of the power of Chane going first. He's going to get to end his turn with a shackle and also a counter on this Duskblade, since he played a non-attack and an attack. He'll still get an Arsenal, his Belittle, which is a great card to have in your arsenal, assuming you draw a 3-powered attack to go with it.
Yeah, pretty nice to sort of develop some permanence on the board here, of course, which is really what a lot of heroes in Flesh and Blood are hoping to do on that turn 0. The damage or the numbers on the dice here that aren't on the Soul Shackle, not quite as relevant, but we have Roger just saying, I'll take that. Thank you. He goes to 34. Here's a Rune Sharp being created by Grasp. Shadow Adversary in pitch. This means Belittle gets to go into the pocket, but not before Duskblade gets in for 3. And here's the Encase block. And why do you think, like, Roger, I guess there's not like a great way to sort of mitigate that damage, but is that reasonable just to sort of, take this little bit of damage, this little chip on turn 0 to have a turn like this?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of pretty surprised that Roger ended up taking all that damage. Since you just draw your hand back up at the end of the turn, it seems like there's not a lot of a cost to using your hand to prevent damage there. I think
there's a sense that he really wanted to fuse Encase and he really wanted to put Scour in Arsenal, perhaps. Could be the hail either way, but he wanted that grip and that one alone.
Yeah, that must be it. He was valuing the Encase very highly and also valuing arsenaling this Scour, which will be pretty good. Chane's going to have 1 shackle and then it's going to get scoured away. And by paying 1 for the Scour, you'll have 2 left over for a Waning Moon activation. It's going to, with the Encase and then the Scour, Chane's not going to have any shackles or a high counter shackles for quite a while.
Yeah, guess what, Chane? You're actually liberated, by the way. Yeah, go free. Oh, you don't want that? Ah, well, sorry. How from Beyond hovered there. But first, yeah, of course, we must shackle. Hey, bounding Demigod into banish here. So, did he just... Okay, yeah, so obviously can't create a shackle here. We can still resolve them, of course, after being encased. Yeah, Roger making sure that the encase is well within his line of sight here.
After the last game, trying to activate everything through the encase, Roger just wants to make sure, I guess.
That's right. You know what Roger can do? Just hold down that plus key, make it effing massive. And just make it impossible to miss here. So the Belittle reveals Belittle. Still a better love story than Twilight. And this represents a 6 damage go again, of course, and with that tutor effect online. Now, I guess there's been a halt called here because, I mean, Roger might be deliberating about this Blizzard getting wedged in between this reveal and this tutor for Minnowism.
Yeah, so when your opponent doesn't have any resources floating, then blizzarding a Belittle in response is pretty tempting because if their hand's 2 reds, even if they were going to go get a blue for resources, you're really like, you just kind of stop them. If he ends up doing it here, we see that Peter has this blue Mauvrian Skies in hand, so it probably wouldn't end up the best. He'll just pitch the Mauvrian Skies to keep the go again, and then he can go get a new blue Minnowism to kind of pay for things.
Yeah. And again, like we talked at the start of this matchup, the Chane's going to be packing a few of those extra blues here, just to be fighting through a lot of this disruption from Iyslander. So we still have this priority window being waited on. Okay, going to go for it. So Blizzard's going to be deployed here from hand. Blues go again unless you pay 2. And yeah, it turns out Mr. Buddensiek flush for cash right now. You'll pay through that quite happily. Still have the Frostbite to worry about, but hey, a blue Minnowism out of the deck is going to be just what the doctor ordered. Or not.
Looks like he still goes with the red Minnowism. So I guess this line is playing red Minnowism and then playing this bounding Demigod and just not attacking with Duskblade this turn, not worrying about getting that counter.
Okay. I mean, what's kind of mental is that you don't lose it either. It just stays. Nice big hit there. Baron Demigod, of course, pumped up coming out of the banish zone, plus that +3 from Minnowism. So really a pretty threatening turn coming out here off that combination. And we're still dealing with a Blizzard from hand here from Roger. Now again, his Arsenal card didn't get deployed at all. There was nothing developed from there yet. So maybe a lighter turn as far as Icelander's disruption is concerned, but still a whopping amount of damage. Whopping, what, 13 to take?
Yeah, and I think Roger's already kind of falling behind in this game. He didn't get an opportunity to cast a Scour there, and now he's not going to have any disruption for this next Chane turn since his card in Arsenal is just a Scour, and he's just attacking with a Finals Fighting Spirit here. Mm-hmm. I'd be pretty worried in this spot if I were him.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's very easy to see like where the exchange of value occurred here on this turn cycle. This maybe goes very differently if Roger surmises that there is a blue in hand there and maybe he takes a different sort of route. What is it? Can you hover that Arsenal card for me? Oh, we get the preview there, Seeds of Agony. But yeah, curious as to what is in Roger's Arsenal.
Oh, it's a Scour
from
the first turn.
Okay. So, Seeds, pretty good. Belittle with no reveal target. Oh no, well, you've got Shadow Versa here, right? Wow. Fortuitous. Okay. Soul Reaping, of course, doesn't get go again unless the defending hero has cards in their soul. And Iyslander is, doesn't have one of those. She might have one of those. He's not sticking any cards in there, that's for sure. So, still pretty relevant, though. I mean, getting to banish cards from your hand rather than pay the cost is incredibly synergistic here. It means that Shadow Versa now, just gets thrown in banish and has access to that later on. Also, this attack it's 6 damage with go again. Obviously, with the Seeds of Agony already haven't been played, so still pretty frightening.
Yeah. And it also is it has go again from the Chane ability, and he gets 2 resources from banishing these cards, so he'll be able to play this Belittle from Arsenal, probably get another Minnowism, play the Seeds, and play a Minnowism to play the Shadow. It's going to be quite a bit of damage that Roger's taking here.
Oh my god! And here's a Scour sat in his arsenal. My goodness.
Still no disruption, just the Scour.
Yeah. The thing is that Chane can attack you on so many different axes here with access to some of these cards. It's not just the soul shackles. It's the it's the weapon getting out of control. It's just this consistency with which you're able to access sort of cards like Seeds from your banish zone and give these 6 attacks sort of go again here. Yeah, I mean, Roger definitely representing Arcane Barrier here for that Seeds damage.
Mm-hmm.
Bracing himself. Red Minnowism was the shooter target. That'll be thrown directly onto the combat chain here. Seeds, because you can. And then Shadow of Ursa comes out to follow that up there. Yeah, like you mentioned, Michael, pretty frightening turn.
Yeah, things are looking pretty rough, and we finally see the Scour used.
Get the shackles, get him.
The 2 shackles are down, but Chane even had a floating resource to Arcane Barrier one of the damage from the Scour. So things are not looking great over here.
Yeah, none of this walking life totals down that we observed in the previous game. Again, only really now finding these Channel Lake Frigids that one might suggest a rather late point in the game. But hey, we've got a fused Ether Ice Vein here. We've got an Amulet of Ice available. So if we want to really start to tear this hand apart, we can. This would be a turn where, I mean, there's still Belittle in Arsenal, right? Yeah, the red one got pocketed, right? So we have the Riftbind there as well to reveal to it. So Channel Lake Frigid less scary. This obviously is a bit more of a problem though, of course, that the Amulet of Ice is going to be activated here to get an extra card.
So this could be a turning point for Roger. From here, we're seeing Chane down to 3 cards. We're seeing him get an Arsenal, Channel Lake Frigid, and Chane has no shackles, has 1 counter on Duskblade. This game definitely isn't over yet. There's still a lot of room for him to come back into this game, despite what the live totals might say.
It's like Belittle, pitch Art of War. Yeah, reveal Riftbind. A much smaller turn by Chane standards for sure. Not having this would have been, I think 2 banish off shackle here, so Chane would have had a chance to have a look at quite a few more cards. But Blue Minnow brought it out of the deck here. Spare a thought for the Iyslander across the table, who again can sort of has that Channel Lake Frigid that was used to fuse. There is already the Ice Vein in hand here, some power cards, and some that will be probably used to block, like this Frost Hex.
We could see Roger keep the Frost Hex and the Channel Lake Frigid here. That way he can play and fuse this Red Aether Ice Vein.
Mm-hmm.
So if he does that, he has to block with the Enlightened Strike, and he's probably taking a decent amount of damage here with the Shackle into the Riftbind, and then the Duskblade, which won't actually get pumped, and it's going to lose its counter at the end of this turn if that's the line that Peter takes. But we've kind of seen it this game that Peter hasn't really put an emphasis on attacking with the Duskblade. He's just been playing cards from Banish, attacking a lot with just attacks from Banish. So not too big of a cost to lose the counter.
He's just coincidentally managed to maintain the counter on here by doing what Chane wants to do in general there. So
yeah,
with his Iyslander opponent at 10, this is a pretty pivotal turn. If it plays out like you sort of suggested, that will represent an opportunity for Roger to force damage and some more of that heavy disruption. You'll know it if he sort of only blocks with a singular card here. A decent spot to sort of find if you want to start sort of catching up. This might be where it is on a bit of a quieter turn from Chane, but still need to answer the matter of this Belittle that's on the combat chain here.
Yeah, and we could see also a line similar to the line I was talking about. I think it was in the first game where Roger had maybe the second game, where he could have played at the channel out and then blocked with a red activated cord at peak and an Arsenal to Red Aether Ice Vein with the channel at 1, and then go into a turn, try to survive through a turn with channel, and then Fuse an Aether Ice Vein as
Yeah.
his kind of disruption afterwards.
Space it out a bit.
Yeah. There's no Insidious Chill this time, so it definitely won't be as powerful. But
Want to point out as well that in scouring the chain, Roger deprives himself of a priority window at the start of Chane's turn. So he couldn't sort of, if he was going to deploy that Channel Lake Frigid, then I believe is in his arsenal. Yeah, that's now not going to be an option. It'll happen now instead. How does this feel for you? Obviously, you know that a blue Minnowism has just been tutored out of the deck, and you sort of are playing a CLF after the fact. I suppose that getting a Frostbite from, you know, playing that from Arsenal helps, but you kind of know your opponent has the Benjamins to play through this.
yeah, the good news is he can't attack with both the Ripbind and the sword anymore, since the channel is going to tax him and keep him from doing that. So it is still effectively stopping a decent amount of damage here. Yep. Probably three from the sword attack.
Peter quickly checking to see if he was encased. He wasn't. So Shackle is a go. Okay, so it will be the Duskblade here instead. Like you mentioned, obviously fetching a blue minnow out of necessity means that, yeah, getting a non-attack action going, not really a possibility. So Waning Moon is going to chime in here, as it often does, with that extra resource off having pitched the Frost-Hex and the Tunic Counter. So starting to whittle away. Again, down to 7, though, of course, it's not really where you want to be as Iyslander. Coronet Peak, get the Channel Lake Frigid in pitch, satisfy your flow counter condition, and keep the party going with this either Ice Vein and Arsenal.
Yeah, 7 life, definitely not where you want to be. But again, the channel's still in play. 1 Shackle, the Duskblade lost its counter here. Things, if Chane draws an awkward hand or two, I think things are looking pretty fine for Iyslander at this point.
Okay. Wow, these Ice Veins are coming thick and fast here. Mm-hmm. Let's see what the banish. Hey, that is a stinker.
Yeah, I would much rather see that. Peter would much rather be drawing those Art of Wars than banishing them. But instead, he's drawing a hand of a lot of Blood Deck cards and banishing his power cards.
I like this. We've already developed our synergy. I use like a really outdated idiom, and you basically explain why I'm reacting in an odd way. I think we can go far, Michael, you and I. I'll use just some really obscure boomer meme from like 99 or something, and then you contextualize it. Really, you just ease into the color commentator role so seamlessly here. So it is a Riftbind, of course, coming in. I'm going to rescue you now, of course, after the Shackle is made. The Chane is making the climb back again. Two Shackles.
Yep, and then we're going to see a Duskblade attack to follow this up. So not an amazing turn, but still threatening some damage.
Yeah, that was like a Riftbind for 4, with seeds haven't been played prior, so it's a bit of a...
This Riftbind was from Arsenal, so it only gets that pump when it's from Banish, and right. This was the Riftbind we saw in Arsenal last turn. It
was the Art of War that went into Banish instead. Tell a lie. Still leak some damage there. All right, Fused Ether Ice Vein is what you're looking for. Chane without an Arsenal. 2 blue Shrill of Skullform in the hand, though. Not really much to work with. Obviously, contents of the Soul Shackle pending.
Yeah, and we're gonna see the channel stay in play too. So,
oh my goodness,
two ice cards. Everything is like, if Roger's gonna get back into this game, this is what it looks like. Yeah. And Peter actually just pitching a full red to prevent 1 damage because he won't really be able to use it, seeing the channel staying in play.
Oh, yeah, it's such a tell, isn't it, to Roger that he doesn't have to. Well, okay, he doesn't have too much to fear.
Oh no!
So roll back the tape, yeah. All right, so we're back to this is obviously after that red was pitched to Arcane. Chane players reaching for their entire deck to draw. I get it. It feels like that sometimes towards the end of the game, but not this time around.
Yeah, with the scour, and I think there was one in case played this game. Rogers really kept the shackle count kind of low.
Yeah. See, Talishar wouldn't let you draw your whole deck, Michael.
It would not.
Don't let you miss your tuning counter. Let you draw your whole deck. It's crazy. So what does this look like for Chane? I mean, we are trying to see what we get off the banish first. Riftbind. Eclipse.
So Chane here is just looking to try to keep from taking too much blood debt damage, try to keep from taking too much damage in general until he draws a hand that's actually like pretty powerful. Because right now, once again, we have a kind of a stinker of a hand, but it is good enough to shackle to be able to attack with his Riftbind and make sure we're not taking any blood debt. But he actually chooses to leave the Riftbind and banish and take 8 point of blood debt to try to threaten a pretty powerful turn the following turn.
Okay. Tuck that away, take the damage. It's virtual Arsenal card here for our Chane. I guess the question now becomes, what comes back his way? We have Amulet of Ice, Ice Bolt, Polar Blast in hand for Roger. He's managed to, eat up a lot of this damage. Still sitting pretty at 5. I think, goodness, it was like, what was it, like 30 to low teens at one point here. So we've definitely been able to bring the game back under control. Kind of like you mentioned, right? If there's enough disruption coming, then Iyslander was going to be in a pretty good place.
Mm-hmm. And here we're seeing 5 arcane damage, and this Amulet of Ice will probably take a second card. So the Aether Iceman will take a card, the Amulet of Ice will probably take a card, and we're going to see Chane on a 3-card hand and taking quite a bit of damage here.
Yeah, that's brutal. And bear in mind that Peter took a point of blood dead damage to sit that Riftbind in his banish zone to sort of give him some action here. But yeah, so now we're not in the realm of keeping Channel Lake Frigid around for any longer. So that is one less thing that Peter is going to have to contend with. But Roger getting to sort of develop this Amulet of Ice before the Ice Vein came down gives him a ton of options, and we'll see what information sort of gets given to him based on how Peter deals with this. First things first, this damage, 5 damage, obviously against 1 arcane barrier, really going to help to even up the ledger here. And it's just going to be a plunder run thrown away. There's just not enough time for the Chane to get that card at Arsenal and then find a turn where you can really find value there.
There's just not. Since he already has a plunder run in Arsenal, he's going to play that. And then he needs all of his cards here to really threaten Roger's life total, because going to 11, knowing Roger's Arsenal and Ice Bolt, that's basically 6 damage with the Waning Moon. He's going to be at 5. He really needs to start presenting lethal as soon as possible, and having a plunder run in his hand isn't going to help do that.
Yeah. Now, Roger has activated this Amulet of Ice, I think. Surreptitiously slid it across the table.
Which means Peter's going to go down to just 2 cards, and none of them are super impressive. He doesn't have a blue. He doesn't have
Double Demigon, Shadow Puppetry.
No Belittles or Artivores. None of his most powerful cards here. And
yeah, we are looking down the barrel of a situation in which Chane might be sent back to the Shadow Realm for what, the 3rd time now? It's going to be a Shadow Puppetry thrown in the bin here. So you're crafting a turn off what's left here. Bear in mind that Riftbind was sort of left in that banish, so no blue in hand for the Chane. Obviously, there's the Ether Iron Wave if we need extra resource density here. Our Duskblade has no counters. Let's see what the Shackle holds. Okay.
So this hitting the seeds here is pretty big, since this Riftbind's still sitting in Arsenal. The Plunder Run would make it a 6 since it's yellow. Then Seeds makes it a 7, which is enough that it pushes some pretty difficult breakpoints to hit. To basically, Roger has it. So it's gonna have some difficulty blocking for the 7.
Yeah, it's quite terrifying. We don't see like Ironhide Gauntlet in this kind of matchup here. So, that Tunic counter can't assist with blocks. No Brothers in Arms here as well. There are situations where Iyslander can contend with these breakpoints a little bit more comfortably here. But yeah, the Riftbind is swinging for the fence here, threatening a draw effect, which is also a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And threatening lethal damage right in here, right now.
So Roger's trying to think at this point what he could do to close out this game and not die this turn, because ideally he'd love to cast his Ice Bolt here, use his Tunic counter to activate Waiting Moon, put Peter down to 5, maybe 6 or 7 if Peter has extra resources to Arcade Barrier, but get him pretty low, and then arsenal a way to finish him the following turn. But it's pretty difficult to have the tools to do that, basically, and a lot of his hand blocks for 2. So he does have to be kind of worried here about just dying if he uses too many resources offensively. Playing this Ice Bolt out, he might not have enough left to block and still be able to arsenal something.
How relevant is this draw trigger potentially if we see hypothermia thrown in here? It kind of it leaves Peter with an extra card. That he maybe can't do too much with. I can't imagine he wants to arsenal a Demigon, but obviously, Roger needs to contend with the upfront damage aspect here first. But
yeah, so Roger can't play the hypothermia here because it's in his hand, and he can't storm stars it either because it's not a wizard action.
Yeah,
so
of course.
He'd have to get the hypothermia into arsenal if he wants to use that to try to buy extra time, basically.
Okay, so yeah, definitely not an option there. Really serves its purpose as not much more than the blocking card here or pitching. Might be that Ice Bolt. Okay, the Seed's arcane damage, I think he was thinking about. Decent point, man, in chat. Caleb sort of mentions that. I guess, yeah, the Iyslander deck definitely features some tech to answer Chane's threat specifically. You might argue that Chane was able to put some of the most busted cards that have ever been printed in Flesh and Blood in his deck. So a little subjective, but that's a completely reasonable discussion point, I suppose.
Yeah. So the going idea into the match was if the Living Legend format was Chane, Starvo, Prism, and then Iyslander just got Living Legend. So those were the only 4 heroes basically in the format, what the decks would look like.
Yeah, of course. So, Scour might find its way into the Iyslander deck in general, of course, with Prism being another looming threat, which is pretty horrendous matchup for Iyslander, if I recall.
Yep, it's very difficult. I think Scour does help. It's probably still a pretty bad matchup, but if you're going to try to beat it, Scour is definitely going to be part of the strategy.
Sure. So we got in front with the aforementioned Scour, and there was a Findle's Fighting Spirit. Yeah, definitely a turn where Roger had to part with many of these cards to try and preserve his life total. Through that, we leak 1. We're not done yet.
Looks like he's leaking 2 because of the refines for 7 and he blocked for 5.
Gotcha. That action point obviously still there, and hey, we get a draw effect. It's a ghosty visit, so perhaps not the most compelling, but yeah, here it goes. Aether Ironweave going to be popped here.
Yeah. Paying 1 to activate it through the Frostbite.
I guess that's fair, right? Net gain of 1 resource. Aether Ironweave gives you 2 resources, only if you played an attack action card and a non-attack action card. I know you're sensing a theme, everybody. And that will be utilized to create a rune chart.
So this specific line presents exactly lethal. If he pitches the Ghostly Visit to attack with the Duskblade, then the Rune Chant will come in for 1. Then the Duskblade will come in for 3 because a non-attack and an attack were played this turn. So this is kind of threatening lethal, but I'd expect to see Roger just block with the Tunic and go to 1 if that ends up happening.
Right. So bear in mind that, yeah, okay. He's indicating that Seeds of Agony here. I guess Seeds of Agony blue doesn't trigger off the yellow Riftbind, right? It's only the 0 cost.
I see.
So he's just saying, hey, it's actually the Bounding Demigon that is going to be including this arcane damage component.
Yeah.
So Rune Chant plus the Seeds Arcane. Yeah, and of course the printed rate on Bounding Demigod, which is going to be 2 coming out of Banish. Oof. Yeah, Tunic gets there. Take 1. Waning you back.
So Roger chooses to keep the cold snap here, which is actually, I think he might end up regretting this in the long run, because he's going to be at 1 life going into Chane's final turn, or it's probably his final turn, and cold snap isn't going to help present lethal, and it's not going to help him survive very well. So it's a rough one to be his last card in Arsenal at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, if he's looking for components to put together like an Alpha Strike to end the game, that's not going to help him. He definitely needs some damage from Arsenal. Right now, of course, like it's Ice Bolt in hand and Waning Moon that represents sort of arcane damage sources to be deployed at instant speed. So no card in Arsenal here, so this is really just the Frostbite that Roger's going for, plus the replacement effect of Cold Snap. Gives him another red attack action. It doesn't block all that well either. It's another scar for a scar into the hand. How are you feeling about this now? Oof.
Much worse now that the 2 seeds were flipped up.
Oh my goodness. All right. So seeds obviously triggers on 2 or less. For red, the yellow seeds triggers on an attack action card of 1 or less. So not too hard to satisfy these conditions. Shackle created here. And we're spoiled for choice. It's going to be a red Minoism also thrown in. A lot of non-attack actions here, and that Bounding Demigod out of Banish is it's going to get its hands dirty here. So it's 6, of course, getting buffed up, and not only by the Minoism, but for coming out of Banish, and a 2 arcane damage component, or 2 instances rather of 1 arcane damage here. So split damage, obviously, a little concerning. Roger still has all this arcane barrier intact, but making use of this hand, I'm curious to see how he manages it.
So the Arcane Barrier is the 2 seeds, and then looks like he just blocks for 6 here with his 3 cards.
Yeah, 3/2 blocks. There is potentially more where that came from, of course. Unhallowed rides into the pitch here to create a Rune Chant, and oh my goodness, okay.
And that's gonna do it.
He's
Roger.
very dead.
Yeah.
Extremely. Yeah, that's pretty nasty. Again, with the Rune Chant component created, it's that Ice Bolt is okay. What am I doing with this? Am I? Yeah, ponder. Yes, I do ponder the results of this matchup. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. In a best of 3 series, it is Chane, of course, Bound by Shadow that comes out on top in our sort of Living Legend Showdown. Some really interesting lines between these 2 players. Again, quite complicated. You're actually dealing with 2 of the most complicated, I guess, yeah, decks of their time. If you want to talk about, playing at instant speed, and of course, Chane's sort of sequencing there. Chane is able to take it away there, pretty spectacularly, I think, in that last game here. That's crazy, Mike. I mean, really, like very back and forth games. We got a bit of a barn burner out of our 3 matches.
Yeah, definitely. I think like you kind of see, like, watching those games, how many interesting decision points there are, and how, like, I think difficult it is to just play both sides of this matchup. They were both like thinking very long, having very complicated turns, where I was trying to predict what lines they would take at certain points. And they were just taking like sometimes they would end up doing something like reasonably different from what I expected, just because there's so many, both these heroes have so many options with like timing things and when to do things and what things to do basically. And
yeah, we talked a whole bunch about like the decision making for Iyslander in terms of, okay, I've got a fuse opportunity here. Do I maintain these cards, or do I try and play a little bit slower? Maybe deploy a different form of disruption and arsenal, and allow myself maybe to block with more cards, or sort of take less damage. We saw that interesting point where Roger wants to play a fused either Ice Vein sort of with a channel like Frigid and play, and really sort of lay it on thick there. We obviously saw that game look pretty one-sided, and from that point on looked relatively deterministic. I mean, I'm going to take this chance to thank obviously Roger and Peter for putting on a show for us here. It's been a lot of fun to see, to really develop players here, show us kind of a what if and maybe what's to come if what James White said, and he wants the LL format to be quote unquote the Wild West. I won't finish the quote because he got a bit he got a bit argy about it. But again, I think this is kind of fun, but also we can only speculate. And a lot of people said, well, hang on, like maybe there is a case for some cards should be banned, or maybe they shouldn't make it into this LL format, and maybe just opening the gates could unleash some ridiculousness here. But we've had 3 back and forth great games of Flesh and Blood, thoroughly enjoyable. Oh, thank you, Peter. Thank you for the. I don't know if we can see it anymore here. He's obviously thrown some numbers down on the play space here. But for those watching as well, if it's first time here, I mean, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Metacast obviously produces quality content week in, week out. The podcast is fantastic, Michael. You and Roger doing a great job, man. And all I want to say before we close up is thanks for having me on. It's been a blast, man. Hanging out with you, chatting some fab, getting a bit of a fantasy matchup here between 2 heroes from different eras, bro. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on in and commentating this. And I think we should also shout out the Goliath Gauntlet if you want to see more high skilled matches being played on and have great commentary. You should go check out the Goliath Gauntlet. It's a great series.
Oh, shucks. Yeah, they're all right. They're all right. They're really weird. They've got this bloody Australian guy who doesn't really know what he's talking about half the time, but they're good blokes. They do all right. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Look, obviously keep your eyes tuned for eyes peeled rather for more content here from the Metacast. I've got a one-up Michael with the cross promotion here. It's been great to have you guys here. We'll see you next time. Much love.